My son told me I wasn't invited to his wedding because his fiancée said I wasn't presentable enough, so I canceled the payment I made to all vendors. See what happened next. He said it like he was asking me to pass the salt. Casual, necessary, without eye contact. I was holding the phone with one hand, the tag of a new dress shirt pinched between two fingers of the other, still trying to peel the little plastic fasteners off without tearing the fabric. We just think it's best if you don't come, he said. She thinks it might be uncomfortable. For everyone. I let the silence breathe between us for a second, as if giving it more time might change the shape of it. Okay, I said. Thanks for letting me know. He hung up first. The shirt ended up balled on the floor of the closet, crumpled like a dropped napkin. It had cost more than I usually spent on clothes, but I'd wanted to look nice. I didn't buy dress shirts often. Weddings were rare, and this one mattered more than anything I could remember. The apartment felt suddenly too quiet, like the power had gone out, though every appliance was still humming. I walked into the kitchen without knowing why. The fridge made a low groan. I opened it, stared inside for a long time, then closed it again. I wasn't hungry. I sat at the table, where a yellow folder held all the vendor contracts and receipts. I traced my name on the check copies with my finger, like it was someone else's signature. It wasn't always like this. I need you to understand that. There were years when I was the first call, the safe place, the voice that soothed skinned knees and bad dreams. I remember holding him in my lap the first time he asked me if monsters were real. No, I'd said. But if they ever come, I'll be right here. Somewhere between then and now, he stopped believing that. I pulled out the photos I'd kept in a shoebox under the bed. The ones I thought I'd show him over dinner one day, maybe after the reception, maybe when the bride had gone to bed. Baby pictures, Christmas mornings, his face smeared with cake, arms outstretched toward the camera. We were both younger. I was thinner, less gray. He was missing teeth in most of the photos, grinning like he had secrets he hadn't told me yet. I studied one of us sitting on the hood of my old car. He was maybe 9. I was teaching him how to change the oil. He looked up at me like I knew everything worth knowing. Some part of me still believed that if I just gave enough, stayed quiet enough, loved big enough, it would turn things around. That he'd see it. That she would. But love isn't a currency they recognize anymore, especially not the kind I'm offering. Stubborn, unpolished, sometimes quiet when it should speak and loud when it shouldn't. Not presentable, he'd said. Her words, not his, but he didn't correct them. Didn't defend me. I imagined the conversation they must have had. Her voice tight, decisive. He doesn't fit in. And him nodding, maybe not agreeing, but not disagreeing either. Maybe you've been there, told you're an embarrassment not because of what you did, but just because of who you are when you walk into a room. I sat at that table until the sun went down. The yellow folder glowed in the weak light from the window, soft and ominous. A pile of invoices paid in full. It was all still happening with or without me. The guests would arrive, the cake would be cut, and they would smile for photos they'd frame in their home. A home I'd likely never see. The absurd part? I almost called him back. I almost said I'd show up in a rented tux, hair slicked back, clean-shaven, quiet in the back row. I almost begged to be there. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I made tea I didn't drink, turned on the TV I didn't watch, and sat on the couch in that same shirt I never got to wear. The tag still digging into the back of my neck like a reminder. Not presentable. You ever feel like someone judged your whole life by a single snapshot? Like everything you've been, everything you've overcome, got edited out of the story because it made people uncomfortable? That's how it felt. That night I dreamed about my son as a child. He was standing at the foot of my bed, holding a toy he wanted me to fix. When I reached out, he pulled away. I'd written the check with shaky hands, telling myself this was love. That was months ago, when he first told me they were getting married. He had called from the car, voice bouncing between lanes and GPS directions, barely enough space to tell me she said yes. I remember smiling, not because I was happy but because I was trying to memorize the sound of him still needing to tell me things. I want it to be nice, he'd said, and I took that as permission. I had the folder already. It sounds sad when I say it out loud, but I'd been planning for that moment for years, saving what I could, reading articles about weddings, asking polite questions to strangers at the grocery store who looked like they knew things about linen colors and cake fillings. I knew I wasn't the planner, just the quiet funder behind the scenes. A shadow roll. Silent safe. I booked the venue myself. Early deposit, refundable. Called the caterer next, an older woman who called me sweetheart, twice in a 10-minute conversation. I liked her instantly. I put down money for the florist, too. Something soft, nothing loud. I told her. She likes lavender, I think. I didn't know if that was true, but it felt right. I signed everything for E&H in the memo lines. Names that used to mean warmth in my chest. Now they just felt like initials on a tombstone. Every signature was a little sacrifice. I told myself it would matter. That maybe in the silence of my giving they'd feel the shape of my love. Looking back now, it's strange how hope doesn't announce itself. It just lingers in the background like perfume. Faint, nearly gone, but enough to convince you the person might still be nearby. I deleted a dozen unsent messages to him after that phone call. Some were just 2 words. I'm sorry. Others were pages long, confessions more than conversations. Apologies for things I'd done and things I hadn't, just to see if anything would open the door again. I tried to imagine the wedding without me, tried to picture the chairs, the aisle, the altar, all the things I'd helped pay for, now off limits. I wondered if anyone would notice I wasn't there, if she'd mention it in a whisper, or if he'd make some excuse. He's traveling. Or, he wasn't feeling well. Maybe they wouldn't say anything at all. Maybe they'd act like I never existed, like some obsolete character written out of the script. I kept thinking about that phrase, not presentable. What does that even mean? My teeth? My clothes? The way I talk too slow when I'm nervous? Was it the way I still fumble with my wallet at checkout lines? Or how I don't own anything tailored? Maybe it was my loneliness. Some people wear their solitude like cologne. Too strong, too much, impossible to ignore. Maybe I stank of it. One day, about a week after the call, I went to the grocery store. Just to move. Just to prove I was still a person. I watched a woman help an older man reach for a jar on the top shelf. She didn't know him. No fanfare, no thanks expected. Just saw someone struggling and stepped in. It undid me. Right there in the aisle next to the pasta sauces, I had to turn away so no one would see my face breaking open. Because I realized I'd been hoping for something that simple. For someone to see me struggling and say, let me help. Not with money. Not with the wedding. Just with being seen. Just with belonging. I left my cart half full and drove home. That night I pulled the folder from the drawer again. Laid out all the receipts like crime scene photos. I stared at each one, tracing over the phone numbers, the invoice dates, the fine print I used to read like a prayer. I thought about calling them. I thought about letting it all burn. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water I didn't drink, left the porch light on even though no one was coming, and lay in bed with my eyes open, listening to the walls breathe. Sometimes silence is the loudest RSVP you can send. I didn't tell anyone what I was about to do, not even myself. There was no singular moment when I decided. No thunderclap or drunken epiphany. Just a steady accumulation of quiet. A slow leak of dignity, until the weight of it tipped me forward. I woke up on a Thursday with the sun scratching against the blinds and a heaviness in my chest that felt both old and newly born. I made coffee and stood barefoot in the kitchen, staring at the yellow folder like it might open itself. It didn't. So I did. The first call was to the venue. A woman named Claire answered. Her voice was brisk but not unkind. How can I help you? I need to cancel an event, I said. For June 10th. She asked for the name on the contract, then paused. You're the father of the groom? I was supposed to be, I said. But it turns out I'm not presentable. The silence on her end was longer than I expected. I'm sorry to hear that, she said finally, her voice softened. Would you like to request a refund or convert the deposit to credit for another date? I laughed, quiet bitter. No, I said. Just cancel it. I went down the list after that. The florist remembered me. Oh, you were the sweet one, she said. The one who wanted lavender. I told her the wedding wouldn't be happening, not the way we'd planned. She didn't ask questions. Just said, I'll take care of it. And her tone carried a kind of respect that nearly undid me. The caterer was next. Her voice cracked when I explained. People are cruel sometimes, she said. You didn't deserve that. I didn't cry. Not on the phone. Not when the confirmations started rolling in one by one. Just felt it all hollow out inside me like a house after the furniture's gone. By noon the wedding was gone. Not in a dramatic blaze, not with revenge in my chest, but in a quiet series of erasures. Few clicks. A few words. It was almost too easy. I expected to feel guilt or at least something adjacent to fear. But all I felt was a strange, cold peace. Like I'd finally stopped begging to be let into a room where no one had saved me a seat. I made a sandwich I didn't finish and turned on the radio. Classical station. Something with violins that rose and fell like breathing. I sat in the living room in that same crumpled dress shirt from before, tag still attached. I hadn't thrown it away. Felt like a monument now. A tombstone made of fabric. Around 4 o'clock I opened the window. It was early spring, and the air was clean with that cold bite that makes you feel alive just by inhaling. Kids were shouting somewhere down the street. Someone was mowing a lawn. Life, indifferent as ever, continued. And then I thought about them, my son and his fiancée. Where they were in their day. Maybe at a rehearsal. Maybe picking up tuxes. Laughing. Smiling. Unaware. Unbothered. The cruelty of it struck me. Not that I'd done it, but that I was the only one who would feel its consequences fully. They'd be angry, yes. But me? I would be the one they told stories about. The father who ruined their wedding. The problem. The villain in some well-rehearsed anecdote for strangers. Still, I didn't regret it. Not then. The truth was I needed to prove to myself that I still had lines. That there was a version of love that didn't involve being invisible. That I hadn't become so desperate for inclusion that I'd pay for my own erasure. On what would have been the rehearsal dinner night, I sat alone and watched the light change in the living room. The walls turned gold for a minute, then gray. I lit a candle. Not for them but for me. I imagined them walking into the venue the next day, finding it locked, calling the caterer and getting no answer, standing in a parking lot in formal wear, surrounded by confusion and blooming anger. I pictured his face the moment he realized what I'd done. I imagined it not with satisfaction but with sorrow, because I knew I'd reached the point of no return. And there's a kind of grief in that too, when you stop waiting to be chosen and start walking away on your own. That night I sat on the porch until well past dark. The candle had burned low inside, flickering in the window. The quiet was deeper than usual. Not heavy but full. Like something had been released. His voice was shaking. Anger, disbelief, maybe something else he didn't mean for me to hear. The voicemail came the morning after the wedding would have taken place. I was up early, unable to sleep, sweeping the kitchen floor with a broom that had seen better days. The phone buzzed once, then again. No name, just the number I knew by heart, though I hadn't dialed it in months. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't think. I just couldn't. When it finished, I stood there holding the broom like it was the only thing keeping me upright. I played the message on speaker, the volume low, just in case I changed my mind and wanted to pretend I hadn't heard it. You ruined it, he said, no hello, no pause. You actually ruined it. Do you even know what you've done? Do you care? His voice cracked on the second sentence. Not from tears, I didn't think he cried, but from the strain of trying not to. There was a sound in the background, maybe the hum of a car, maybe people. It was hard to tell. You think this was about you? That this was some game to win? You embarrassed us. You embarrassed me. I can't believe you do this. I can't believe I ever thought. A long pause. Then quieter. You always find a way to make it about you. He hung up before he could say anything more. I sat down at the table, the broom leaning against my knee like it was listening too. You always find a way to make it about you. That line stuck in my throat like a bone. Echoed against every wall of the apartment. I whispered it once, just to hear how it sounded in my own voice. Maybe he was right. Maybe there's a part of me that's always been hungry for validation, for acknowledgement. I've spent a lifetime trying to earn back something I couldn't name. Maybe I used money to say what my words couldn't. Maybe I thought love was a transaction that could be tallied up. Checks, favors, sacrifices, and when the balance tipped too far, I wanted something back. But is that selfish? Or just human? I remembered a fight we had when he was 17. I had grounded him for something. I don't even remember what. He had yelled through the door, "You'll ruin everything someday, you know that?" And I hadn't replied. I just sat on the other side of the door, forehead against the wood, and let that sentence crawl under my skin. Maybe this was it. Maybe that was the moment this version of us was born. I didn't call him back. Not right away. Not out of pride, but out of something messier. Fear. Grief. The kind of hurt that makes you quiet not to punish, but because you genuinely don't know what would come out if you spoke. Around noon my neighbor knocked on the door. Mrs. Ellis, widow, kind eyes, the type who always remembers when garbage pickup is delayed. She had a small pie in a foil tray. I made extra, she said, even though I knew she lived alone. We ate it on the porch. She didn't ask why my eyes were red. She just talked about the weather, her sister's new dog, and how tulips were coming in late this year. That kindness almost broke me. It reminded me that not all love is conditional, that some people still show up with pie when they sense you've stopped eating. She didn't know what had happened, but she knew something had. That night I wrote a letter. I didn't plan to send it, but I wrote it anyway. In it, I told him about the first time I saw him after he was born, how small he looked in my arms like something borrowed. I told him about the lavender and the caterer, and how I'd meant it all as a gift, not a wedge. I told him I'd canceled everything not out of spite, but because it was the only power I had left. I told him I still loved him, even if it was in a way he couldn't understand. I sealed the letter. Placed it on the shelf beside the photos. A record of what wasn't said for the future, or maybe just for me. Sometimes the only way to love someone is to step away, before you lose the last of yourself trying to stay. It took a few weeks for the dust to settle, though settle is generous. Things just stopped moving. No more calls, no new messages. Just silence, thick and total. The kind that makes you start second-guessing whether anything really happened at all. I kept the voicemail, though I never listened to it again. I kept the letter too, unopened, unmailed, sealed in an envelope with his name in the center. I stopped leaving the porch light on. Stopped checking my phone after every sharp buzz. Even hope needs a deadline, and mine had come and gone. The apartment stayed clean for a while, unnaturally so. I was afraid to leave traces, as if mess meant I still expected company. But over time life crept back in. Dishes in the sink, an unmade bed, a half-read book left open on the couch. Not carelessness, just proof that I was here, still trying. I started a garden. Nothing elaborate. Just a few clay pots on the balcony. Rosemary, cherry tomatoes, some basil. It wasn't about the food. It was about having something to tend to. Something that would grow if I showed up for it. At the library, I signed up for a card I hadn't used in years. I checked out a book on grief. Not the losing someone to death kind, but the slow estrangement kind. The kind where people don't die, they just move on without you. It said that kind of grief has no rituals.
No casseroles. No funerals.
Just a hole no one can see but you. I started cooking again. Real meals, not just toast or soup. I'd light a candle before I ate, not because it made anything special but because it made me pause. A small ceremony for nothing in particular. And then one day a card arrived. No return address, just my name. The handwriting was unfamiliar, careful. Inside 6 words. I don't understand, but I'm thinking about you. That was it. No signature, no clue. But I knew. I knew it wasn't her. It wasn't her voice. It was him. The same way you know someone's footstep from across a room, even if they never speak. I placed the card on the mantel, beside the old photo of us on the hood of the car. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just stood there, letting it be what it was. Not an apology, not a fix, just a thread. Fragile, thin, maybe even temporary. But still a thread. I didn't write back. Not because I didn't want to, but because I finally understood the difference between leaving the door open and holding it hostage. Some days are still heavy. I still think about the wedding that wasn't, the dance I never had, the speech I never gave. But I also think about Mrs. Ellis pie, about the lavender I almost got right, and the rosemary that refuses to die no matter how much sun I forget to give it. This is what healing looks like, I think. Not a triumph. Not a big movie ending. Just a man alone, eating pasta with too much garlic, with a candle flickering next to a letter he never sent. If you're listening, if anyone is, I just want you to know, I didn't walk away because I stopped loving him. I walked away because I finally realized love wasn't supposed to cost everything I had. And that's the gift. Not presence. Not absence. But the space between the two where something new can breathe. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like, comment, or share your own experience. Your voice matters here. Subscribe for more stories that explore the quiet corners of human connection, grief, and resilience. Sometimes the simple act of listening or being heard is enough to begin again. See you soon in the next story.